What if I told you that prophecies written thousands of years ago are being fulfilled right now, before our very eyes? Would that scare you? Or would it awaken something within you? Wars, pandemics, natural disasters, moral crises. The world seems to be on the brink of collapse. But what if all of this had already been foretold in the Holy Scriptures? What you are about to discover now may surprise you. The Bible, in its prophecies about the end of times, describes in detail signs that are already part of our daily lives today. Have you ever had that feeling that something big and perhaps irreversible is about to happen? Stay with me until the end, because in this video, we will explore these signs based on the Word of God. These are not theories, but facts that point to a prophetic scenario already underway. Many ignore them, but those who discern the times can see them clearly. And the question that remains is, are we living in the last days? Because the signs have already begun. Jesus, in one of the most intense moments of his ministry, sat with his disciples on the Mount of Olives and made a profound, almost unsettling revelation. They wanted to know when the end would be, what would be the sign of his coming, and the answer they received was anything but comforting. In Matthew 24, he didn't just answer, he warned. He spoke of wars and rumors of wars, of nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. He said there would be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. And then he uttered a phrase that echoes to this day with an almost prophetic weight. All these are but the beginning of sorrows. It's as if Jesus were drawing a map for those who wanted to see it. A map made up of signs, clues, and events that, viewed in isolation, might seem like just part of the natural course of history. But when put together, they form a picture that begins to make sense. Think about it. When else in humanity have we seen all of this happen? At the same time and with such intensity? Local wars turning into global threats, pandemics spreading in a matter of days, the earth shaking in places that once seemed stable. These are not just isolated events. They are a pattern. And it's not just natural disasters or political conflicts. There's something deeper at work behind these events. Something that shakes the balance of the world, people's faith, the human spirit itself. The constant feeling of urgency, of collective anxiety, as if time were running out faster, as if we were on the brink of something we can't yet name. Does this sound familiar? When Jesus said that these signs would be just the beginning, he was telling us that there would be more, that these events would be like birth pangs, intense, cyclical, coming ever closer, preparing the world for something great and final. This analogy is powerful. Birth pangs are not the end. They are the announcement of a birth, and birth in this case is the end of one age and the beginning of another. Interesting how all this connects to what we experience. Conflicts between nations, growing polarization, the collapse of values, the constant threat of new plagues, fear of the future. It's as if we are trapped in a prophetic cycle that repeats itself with greater force every decade. And the most surprising thing? This was already predicted more than 2,000 years ago by a man who knew the human heart like no one else. What many people ignore is that this chapter of Matthew is not just a prediction, but an invitation to be vigilant. Jesus did not speak about the end to scare, but to awaken, to open the eyes of those who wish to understand the times and discern what is to come, because the signs are there, not as punishment, but as a warning, not as despair, but as a chance for change, a chance for preparation. Do you see how each word of Jesus comes to life when we observe what is happening today? Nothing is out of place. Nothing is happening by chance. There's a spiritual logic behind all of this, even if to human eyes it seems like chaos. And that is precisely where the mystery lies. Have you ever noticed how everything seems to be speeding up? Not just the pace of life, but the way we deal with the world. In a few seconds, we can access news from anywhere on the planet. In minutes, we can cross borders with a click. Knowledge, which used to take generations to accumulate, now multiplies in a matter of days. Artificial intelligence, space, exploration, genetic engineering, surveillance systems, cryptocurrencies, virtual realities, all of these have become part of our daily lives in the blink of an eye. But the most intriguing thing is that this was also prophesied. But before I continue, I ask that you subscribe to the channel. In the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 4, we find a phrase that goes unnoticed by many, but carries a profound meaning. Many will run to and fro, and knowledge will increase. This was a revelation that the angel himself gave to Daniel as a clue about what would happen in the end times, and what once seemed distant or symbolic today sounds almost literal, because we are in a time where coming and going from one corner of the world to the other has become commonplace. Bullet trains, hypersonic planes, 5G internet, satellites connecting every point on Earth. It has never been so easy to run from one place to another. And what about science? It hasn't just grown, it's exploded. In a single day, we produce more data than in entire centuries of ancient humanity. Medicine is advancing at an astonishing speed, breaking boundaries that once seemed unattainable. Machines learn, speak, and make decisions. Genetic codes are being edited, and humans are now trying to recreate life in the lab. It sounds like science fiction, but it's the reality we're already living in. The most curious thing is how all this fascinates and at the same time scares, because along with progress comes the feeling that we are playing with things we don't fully understand. Technology that should bring us closer together often isolates us. The information that should be released is sometimes confusing. We are immersed in an ocean of knowledge. But do we know how to swim? Daniel saw this coming, and he knew that this advancement would not come by chance. It was one of the signs, one of the markers that something greater was approaching. The unbridled growth of science would not only be a human advance, but a cog in a much broader plan. A plan where speed, connection, and access to information would serve as preparation or as distraction. It all depends on where you are looking. Amidst so many signs that are being fulfilled, there is one specific event that carries an almost prophetic weight, and that many people are unaware of or simply do not realize the depth of. We are talking about the rebirth of a nation that, for almost 2,000 years, had disappeared from the map. Israel. After centuries of dispersion, persecution, and exile, the Jewish people returned to their land, and in 1948, against all odds, the State of Israel was officially re-established. This was not just a geopolitical milestone, it was the direct fulfillment of a promise recorded in Scripture millennia ago. Imagine a people scattered around the world, maintaining their identity, their culture, their faith, even without a homeland. No other human group has experienced anything like this with such persistence. And then, almost impossibly, these same people return to their ancestral land, rebuild their nation, revive their language, and assert their sovereignty in one of the most contested and sacred places on earth. This is not just history. It is prophecy being written before the eyes of the world. Several passages in the Bible speak of this return. Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah all announce that in the last days, God would bring his people back to the promised land. And that is exactly what happened. Ezekiel 37, for example, describes the famous valley of dry bones that are transformed into a living army, a symbolic but powerful image of Israel's restoration. And these are not forced interpretations. This was one of the greatest signs ever fulfilled, recognized even by secular scholars and historians who, even without faith, admit the uniqueness and impact of this event. The most impressive thing is that this return was preceded by intense pain, wars, persecutions, the Holocaust. And yet, the promise was fulfilled. Israel returned, was reborn, and today is at the center of global tensions, exactly as the prophecies also indicate. This detail is important. The world's focus on this small nation is not accidental. There is something spiritual happening there, something that goes beyond political or economic interests. Israel's rebirth was the beginning of a silent countdown, an essential piece in the end times puzzle. While many see only conflict and territorial disputes, others see the signs. They realize that none of this is random, that the Bible is being confirmed, line by line, with frightening accuracy. And when you begin to connect these revelations with today's events, the feeling is inescapable. We are living within what was prophesied. If you pay attention to the headlines that circulate every day, you will notice that there is a pattern that repeats itself, like an increasingly loud echo. Conflicts, threats, tensions, and these are not isolated episodes. Instability seems to have taken over the planet like a cloud that does not dissipate. The Middle East continues to be a constant epicenter of confrontations and disputes. The war in Ukraine has rekindled fears that seemed forgotten since the Cold War. Powers armed with nuclear warheads provoke each other with veiled speeches, while alliances are formed in silence. Everything seems on the brink of an irreversible imbalance, and the phrase that once sounded like an exaggeration now becomes frighteningly plausible. We have never been so close to a global conflict as we are now. The most disturbing thing is that all of this also fits with the words of Jesus, when he warned about wars and rumors of wars. It wasn't just about the physical combat, but about the constant tension, the expectation that something serious could happen at any moment. The rumor in itself already causes fear, instability, and hasty decisions. We live in an era where rumors of war can arise from a simple social media post, a misinterpreted statement, or a drone flying over the wrong border. Modern warfare begins not just with tanks, but with information and threats. It is an invisible field that prepares the ground for something much greater. And if we look carefully, we will see that this global atmosphere carries not only political weight, but also a dense spiritual climate. It is as if the world is constantly on the brink of something that has not yet happened, but that everyone feels is approaching. Civil wars, ethnic conflicts, diplomatic breakdowns. Even nations that were once stable are now facing internal crises. And this creates a collective sense that we are living on a fine line, and all it takes is one false step for everything to fall apart. This is the essence of the times we live in, a time marked by geopolitical anxiety, ideological polarizations, arms races, and a diminishing trust in the structures that once guaranteed some peace. And the most impressive thing, all of this was accurately predicted, as if we were simply watching an ancient script unfold, only now, in real time. Because the Bible not only anticipated the events, but also the spirit of these times. Global insecurity, collective fear, the absence of true peace. Amidst so many voices, so many beliefs, and so many promises of truth, a silent question lingers in the hearts of many people. Who can we trust? It has never been so easy to find speeches that speak in the name of God, leaders who promise revelations, spiritual gurus who offer ready-made answers to the emptiness of the soul. But the truth is that not everything that sounds spiritual comes from the light. In recent times, we have seen an almost uncontrolled proliferation of distorted doctrines, convenient interpretations, and movements that claim to be religious but are completely disconnected from the scriptures. Comment below which theory scares you the most in these last few days. And the most dangerous thing is that many of these voices speak with authority, use the right language, manipulate emotions, and mix truths with lies. This creates a confusing environment where discernment is stifled by appearances. And so, without realizing it, millions are being deceived, without knowing that they are heading towards the abyss. Because spiritual deception does not come as a scary monster. It comes disguised as light, comfort, healing, and promise. Jesus was direct in warning about this. He said that in the last days false prophets would arise, who would perform signs, who would deceive even the elect, if possible. And that is exactly what we have seen. People being seduced by messages that massage the ego, but do not confront sin. Healings that move the heart, but do not transform the heart. Full services, but empty lives. There is a spiritual hunger in the world, but not all the food that is offered is pure. Advances in technology have also intensified this phenomenon. Today, anyone with access to the internet can become a spiritual leader, even without a foundation, without preparation, without a commitment to the truth. Videos, sermons, revelations, everything spreads in seconds, reaching fragile, wounded, tired people. And when pain meets a quick promise, it is easy to fall. It is easy to believe. And that is when deception sets in, silently, smiling. This reality cannot be ignored, because it is not just a detail of the end, it is one of the pillars of the great illusion. And it is frightening to think that many believe they are on the right path, when in fact, they are further and further away. The appearance of holiness has become a dangerous disguise. And the true calling today is not to be religious. It is to be vigilant. Because the feeling today is that the world is increasingly loveless, as if something had broken inside, silently. And now no one understands each other anymore. No one listens anymore. No one cares anymore. Relationships seem more fragile. Values have been lost amid the noise of screens and promises of quick success. What was once wrong is now normal. What was once honorable is now ridiculed. And behind this silent chaos, there is something deeper going on, something that the Bible revealed long ago. In 2 Timothy 3, there is an almost surgical description of human behavior in the last days. It is as if Paul was looking at today's society when he wrote that men would be selfish, lovers of money, arrogant, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, irreverent, that they would be cruel, without self-control, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Words written centuries ago, but which today seem like newspaper headlines, social media posts, street corner talk. Everything that was once an exception has become the rule, and everything that was worthy has become the butt of jokes. We live in a time when people are taught to seek only what suits them. The truth was relativized. Right and wrong became opinion. Respect, empathy, honesty, all of these have been replaced by appearances, vanity, and pride. Love has grown cold. Families fall apart. Ties are broken for nothing. Children defy parents as if there were no more authority. Greed has become celebrated, and humility seen as weakness. What is happening to the human heart? Perhaps the answer lies precisely in this inversion of values. When the foundations are removed, everything falls apart. Evil no longer needs to hide. It parades, applauded. But the most frightening thing is how naturally all this has been accepted. Resistance to what is good, pure, and just is growing, as if there were a collective weariness, indifference, as if deep down the world were giving up on being good. But this is no coincidence. This moral degeneration is not just a social consequence. It is part of a prophetic scenario. It is the sign of a generation that is moving away from the truth, that prefers to believe in comfortable illusions rather than face the mirror of conscience. And when the truth becomes uncomfortable, deception becomes a refuge. In many parts of the world, following the Christian faith is not only difficult, it is dangerous. There are countries where owning a Bible is considered a crime, where gathering in prayer can lead to imprisonment, torture, or even death. It is something that, for those who live in more liberal contexts, may seem distant, almost unreal, but it is not. As we speak here, there are brothers and sisters being persecuted, hiding, trying to keep the flame of faith alive under constant threat. And this silent reality does not make headlines, does not become a documentary, does not generate mass commotion, but it happens every day. In nations where authoritarian regimes control everything, professing Christianity is seen as an act of rebellion. Underground churches, secret services, words whispered instead of preached. And the most impressive thing is that even in the midst of the most severe persecution, the number of Christians continues to grow. There is something powerful about this kind of faith, a faith that does not depend on structure, on a stage, on comfort. It is a faith that survives the fire. But hostility is not only increasing in distant countries. In regions of the West, where religious freedom has long existed, the situation is changing. This is not institutionalized persecution, but rather a subtle and constant rejection. Being a Christian today, in many environments, is a reason for ridicule, exclusion, and labeling. Talking about biblical values can be seen as intolerance. Defending Christian principles has become uncomfortable, and Christians are increasingly expected to remain silent, adapt, and bow down. This silent pressure creates a kind of self-censorship. Many are afraid to take a stand, to live their faith authentically. It is a persecution that does not bind the body, but tries to bind the conscience, that does not destroy churches with bombs, but tries to dismantle them with shame, sarcasm, and rejection. This is how the enemy works in the shadows. Not only with violence, but with attrition. By attrition of courage, confidence, and firmness. And yet, even in the face of all this, there are those who remain steadfast. Whoever continues praying, even in secret. Who refuses to trade their faith in exchange for acceptance. Who understands that being a Christian in today's times is not just about attending a church, but resisting a world that tries to erase any trace of light. While many try to silence the faith, something extraordinary is happening in parallel, something that no political or cultural force can stop. The gospel is spreading like a flame that leaps from heart to heart. from screen to screen, crossing oceans, borders, and languages. The prophecy recorded in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 14 says that this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. This phrase is not just a promise, it is a key, a prophetic milestone that is being fulfilled before our eyes, often without us realizing it. With the advancement of technology, the message of Christ has reached places that were inaccessible for centuries. The Bible has been translated into thousands of languages, and new translations continue to appear every year, even into remote dialects spoken by small, isolated communities. Missionaries have entered hidden villages, traveled through jungles, deserts, mountains, and even war zones. But now, with the internet and mobile devices, the Word of God reaches places where no one else can physically go. In many countries where the Christian faith is persecuted, the gospel is delivered through headphones. Digital Bibles are sent clandestinely. Videos, audios, and apps have served as bridges to bring hope where a church cannot be built. And even in urban and modern environments, where spiritual fatigue has taken hold of so many people, the truth still finds its way. People who have never entered a church are listening to transformative messages in their own bedrooms, often in the silence of the early morning, seeking answers that no coach, no influencer, no system has been able to offer. Never before in history have so many people heard about Jesus in such a short time. This movement is invisible to the eyes of the media, but visible to heaven, because the gospel is reaching the ends of the earth, as was said to happen. And this changes everything, because this advance is not just statistical, it is spiritual. It fulfills one of the last steps announced by Christ before the end. It is no coincidence that this part of the text ends with a direct and definitive warning, and then the end will come. It is as if everything is falling into place, every piece, every sign, every detail. After all this, it is impossible not to stop and think. Wars, famine, disease, natural disasters, unbridled technological advancement, the rebirth of Israel, the reversal of values, silent persecution, the increase in spiritual deception, and the gospel spreading like never before. There are so many signs, and they all point in the same direction. They are not appearing out of nowhere, nor are they happening in isolation. They are connected, and together they form a portrait of a very specific time, a time that has been accurately described in Scripture, a time called the last days. But are we noticing this, or are we so busy, distracted, numbed by routines and superficial urgencies that we let these warnings pass by as if they were just coincidences? Because they are not. These signs are warnings. Are you listening? It's funny how most people feel that something is wrong, but they don't know exactly what it is. There is a weight in the air, a silent urgency, a restlessness that cannot be explained logically, but which is felt in the spirit, as if something was about to change, fall apart, or begin. And maybe all of this is exactly that, a wake-up call. But here's an important point. Talking about the end times is not about spreading fear. It's not about creating panic. It's about opening our eyes. It's about understanding that what's at stake is not the end of the world. It's the beginning of a choice. It's not about fearing what's coming. It's about preparing for what's inevitable. It's not about hiding. It's about taking a stand. It's about recognizing the times we live in and deciding what to do with them. Jesus' message was always clear. He left no doubts or impossible mysteries. He said that the signs would come, and that those who were attentive would know how to discern the season, like someone who feels the wind change before the rain. And now, everything indicates that this season has arrived. The prophetic clock is ticking, and every detail, no matter how small it may seem, is shouting something much bigger, that time is running out, and the decision is personal. If you've come this far, it's because this message made sense to you in some way. Maybe it touched something that was already deep in your heart, or simply opened your eyes to things that previously seemed disconnected. And that's why this space exists, for us to walk together, reflect, and seek understanding in a time when so much is confusing. If this content helped you, if it brought you clarity, or gave you that pause that we sometimes need, subscribe to the channel. There is still a lot for us to explore together. always with that same deep and true perspective that connects us. And leave the phrase, "I'm with you until the end," in the comments, just so I know who stayed until the last second and is truly on this journey. Oh, and if this video touched you in any way, leave a like too. This shows that it's worth continuing to bring this type of content, direct, unhurried, and full of meaning. See you soon.